Hi guys, I'm Lisa. I'm a current student at UNE, currently studying sports psychology, which I'm going to discuss a little bit about today, specifically arousal and the effects on sport performance. What we know is that arousal can have both positive and negative effects on performance. So generally, we assume someone who has a higher arousal intensity is likely to perform better than someone who is not as aroused. And if we were to continue with that thought, the more aroused an individual, the better their performance. However, that is not the case. And we do have a few theories and explanations that demonstrate that. So Gould and Crane explain arousal as the combination of physiological and psychological activation that refers to a measurable intensity of motivation to a specific situation. The picture we can see here shows arousal as a continuum, so from low to high. So coma guy here has no arousal intensity whatsoever, but our young cheerleader has high arousal intensity. So someone who is highly aroused will show mental and physical activations, so increased heart rate, perspiration, breathing, and so on. We wouldn't consider these either to be negative or positive events in isolation. However, factors such as anxiety and state emotions do come into play, and these can assign positive and negative outcomes. And this, of course, is going to affect our performance. So arousal-related emotions such as state and trait anxiety, cognitive and somatic state anxiety are influential to performance. So we always need to consider these things. So without delving too deeply, state is the temporary situational reaction, and trait can be defined as an individual's normal or typical behavioural reaction. So someone who's pretty chilled out probably isn't going to get too hyped up over things. Where somatic and cognitive anxiety are defined as the physiological. So again, your heart rate, and cognitive would be worry. So a lot of sports and exercise psychologists have been studying this link between arousal, anxiety, and performance. And to some degree, we have been able to explain and also measure how this relationship of both the physiological and psychological functions can advance individuals' performances. So looking at a couple of theories, first we have Yerkes' inverted U. Now, generally, this is the most accepted and well known. What you see is an upside down U. And as arousal increases, so does performance until you reach that peak in the arc where the athlete gets their performance results or their best performance results. And then if arousal continues to increase beyond that point, the performance will decline. So it's a good explanation, but there are a few things missing, and it's kind of like a BMI for arousal. It's a good starting point. So then we have Hannon's individual zone of optimal functioning, or I like to call it eyes off. Unlike the inverted U, it does recognise the individual differences for state anxiety. So acknowledging that optimal level does not always occur at the midpoint for every athlete or event. So you see the three examples here, what they are showing through state anxiety levels where an individual's optimal zone can occur. And you'll notice that someone can have low state anxiety level but be in their optimal zone, whereas somebody needs high anxiety or state anxiety levels to be able to be in that optimal zone. So you can see also that that's a band, not just a specific point. So the individual has a range for optimal performance. Quickly, we'll just cover Kerr's reversal theory as well. Again, this further goes into the effects of state anxiety on the individual level. Because it looks at how the individual perceives these physiological and psychological activations. So one individual may perceive an increased heart rate as something as an exciting or pleasant experience, and someone else may see it as an anxiety that can decrease their level in performance. So this one is still quite highly tested. So it does allow us to have a little bit more of an understanding because it goes into the performer's interpretation of arousal, and that their recognition of this also allows the performer to shift the interpretation from moment to moment, which in sporting context is quite necessary. So really, how do we use arousal to get the best out of ourselves and performers? Now, there is a study done by Terry and Karagoris, I believe is the name. So I've supplied a link if you want to have a read. It is quite interesting. So this research basically outlines the benefits of music to increase arousal for performance. So by listening to music before, during performance, it has shown that it improves mood, arousal control, reduce perceived exertion, enhance workout output, improve skill acquisition, flow states, and also disassociation from the feelings of pain and fatigue. So I think we've all seen in the Olympics athletes before an event listening to music, and this is something that they use to either psych themselves up or even reduce their arousal levels so that they're in their optimal arousal state. I know I do it myself when I go to the gym. You know, music that they have there playing isn't always the best, but I know the music that really gets me pumped up. So this is definitely one technique that we can use to increase arousal. So quickly, I will demonstrate this on how we can incorporate music to increase arousal for optimal performance. Now, what I'm showing you in the first clip is the performer doing some very heavy leg presses. I actually made him do a couple of sets without music, first just to get him really fatigued and also decrease his arousal state. And you can see, you know, he's getting through it, he's struggling, he's quite tired. I think he was ready to give up at one stage. And now what you're looking at is he's actually chosen his pump up song, and he's doing his last set listening to this music. You'll see that not only has he gotten through and really pushed, like in a cognitive and physiological state as well. So he's used that music to really pump himself up and get through that last set. And I actually found out that was one of the heaviest weights he's actually pushed to date. So it was quite a good experiment that we did there to show that music can be used to increase optimal arousal. So when we think about this in terms of practical application, trainers and practitioners, it's really important to consider arousal and state anxiety levels. We want to get to know our performers, identify optimal combinations of arousal, emotions that are going to produce these best performances, really understanding how their personal and situational factors influence arousal. So, you know, I know that my performer has certain selections of songs that will increase his performance. So basically just knowing what makes them tick. And this is also going to help recognise when your performers are experiencing increased or decreased arousal during performance as well, so that you can really tailor your coaching or instructions to help them get or reach optimal arousal or reduce arousal, depending on what the situation is requiring, so that they can really get their best performance.